Okay, so today I want to talk to you guys, or voice a story from when we had the chocolate factory. And we had a particularly troublesome employee who meant very well, but what they ended up doing actually caused us quite a lot of headaches, and we gave this person way too much wiggle room before eventually getting rid of them. And so what I wanted to process today is how to have a conversation with people with a certain outcome in mind and how I went about this process. So it was quite a long process, I think, oh gosh, maybe 6 months to a year across this, where we had difficulties. And I was fairly new to entrepreneurship at this point. I think maybe we'd hired, 30 people by this time at a guess. So it was all very new still. And I went out of my way to research to find out the best way to do this. So a book that was recommended to me, which is massively well known, is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the two biggest takeaways I got from it for this sense was, whenever having a conversation with someone, this is number one, what outcome do you actually have in mind? And then just play a game of like logical chess to say, okay, if I say this, what will their response be? What will they be thinking? So that you can basically script out how you want the conversation to go. Because if you imagine it in this case, where someone does something wrong in a public setting, someone spills a drink on you or a misunderstanding of whatever. And right there and then your emotion might be, well, screw you, I'm going to hit you, I'm going to get angry and shout and all that sort of stuff. But the outcome of that is if there's a mistake and then you shout at someone else, the most likely scenario is they're going to shout back at you. But is that what you want? So in any social setting like that, I think the answer is unequivocally no. Like, why escalate anything into a fight? Because the worst case scenario is you actually have a fight, someone throws a punch or pulls out a knife or something crazy, and someone ends up dead or in jail, or like your whole life gets ruined from a misunderstanding. What is the point? Whereas, if the goal of the conversation in that scenario is, I want to stop this as soon as possible, and there is a misunderstanding, and you don't care, in reality tomorrow, you're gonna give a damn? No? Okay, great. Just apologise. Just be like, yeah, my fault, my bad, I'm out. Sorry, did I inconvenience you? Okay, we all good? Amazing. Done. Dealt with. And so going into conversations just thinking, what outcome do I want? And how do I want them to respond might really help you go about doing that. And so with this, what I wanted to do was to find out why she was doing things. Because at the end of the day, I wanted to change her behaviour, and having a go at her wasn't going to entice her to do that, essentially. And so that leads me on to part 2 of this, which is, I fundamentally believe that humans are all very similar, and that if we were all given the same set of context, history, experiences, information and thought processes, we would all come to the same conclusions as to why they have the same conclusions, right? And so if someone is doing something and you're confused by why, there, I think, is either a piece of information that you have that they don't, or a piece of information that they have that you don't. And so the reason that I bring that up is because that's what I fundamentally believed going into this conversation with this employee at the time, to figure out why she was doing what she was doing. And what she was doing was excess stuff that wasn't her confined job, because she was brought into the business at a time where really you just need hands. So at the early stage of a business, there's not enough activity to have a singular role in just fulfillment or just sales or just this or just that. And so really she had her hands in so many pies at the start that as we grew, her role became more confined, more narrowed, more specific, and we put her into the role that she was best at out of the team. And she was really good. She was the only person that actually performed the job that needed to be done at the rate that was even close to what we could do it. She was packing boxes, essentially, fulfilling orders in that sense. And so after speaking to her for a lot of time, the reason she was doing stuff outside of her job and not getting her own job done was for the good of the business, at least in her head. Now, the issue was where she wasn't privy to all of the information, all of the context by which we were making decisions, the decisions she made were unhelpful. And so we essentially end up having a conversation to say, hey, look, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Figuring out what it was, and then saying, okay, as the business is going to grow, your job needs to be more process driven and more, we need this one thing done. Are you happy with that or not? And essentially she said yes. We ended up staying a few more months, but it just wasn't what she wanted. And so then we ended up parting ways. And so, yeah, that's how I'd recommend going about having conversations where you need a specific outcome. Just to summarize, so number one, think ahead as to what response do you want to get? What is the outcome you're heading for? And is what you're going to do actually going to go towards that? And then two, most people think the same way, given the same set of information. So if someone is doing something unexpected, what information do you have that they don't? And what information do they have that you don't? So go about figuring that out, and that will help, point number one, so that you can form a script per se, or a direction by which you want to start the conversation to achieve the desired outcome. And I think actually this whole concept of that first point of achieving what outcome do you actually want to achieve is so powerful in business and in life generally, because if your goal in business is to make money, which a lot of entrepreneurs, that is the goal, and that's totally fine, then a lot of the direction and effort that you put in could be better spent, could be better focused, if you actually refocus the lens on that goal being the desired outcome. And then what you could do is you could look at your entire day and say, right, what activities do I have to do? Put a price on those, of calculate the cost and the value of each item, and then say, right, I'm only going to do the one thing that actually increases the goal of money, and I will find a way to hand off the rest. That way you can leverage your time the best, which is generally how solopreneurs start to scale. So there you go. My little thoughts for you today as I'm going for finishing a hike through a waterfall in Bosnia. And I have somewhat dealt pretty okay with the jet lag today, but I'm sure it will wallop me tomorrow. All right, guys, have a lovely day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.